everybody, how's it going? We wanted to give you an update on block 1 of the Kaffe Mystery Quilt, and then also give you the information for block 2, because we had some people with some questions about block 1. Again, we're making this beautiful Kaffe Mystery Quilt. We still have some bundles available if you'd like to buy the fabric kit. It comes in a Delft blue and then also a multicolor, and it's a mystery quilt. It's not the puzzle pieces that you see on top. It's a mystery quilt that'll be beautiful when it's all done. So let's get on to block 1. It's called Cathedral Tiles Mystery, and block 1 uses these 4 fabrics: 2 jumbles, and then a Roman glass, and a milfoil fabric, a blue milfoil. So first you make
with fabric F and G, these 2 pieces here, you're going to cut 3 strips of each, measuring 3 3/4.
Okay, and then you sew them together.
And so there's what it looks like.
To make a strip that looks like this. And why did you do this? Because we're making 4 patches, aren't we? Let's show what we're going to make at the end.
Some people think that when you make a 4 patch, you just start with squares, but a much easier way to do it is to sew your strips together like this, and then you go and you're going to cut them in segments of 3 3/4. So you'd measure and cut 3 3/4, and you do that all, and then you wind up sewing those together, and you wind up with a block like this. And then you trim it down because it's supposed to measure 6 7/8, not quite 7 inches. It's just under 7 inches.
Okay.
So it's a quicker way to do it than just sewing just squares together.
Well, and the other thing that's great is that when you press it all to one side, you can nest your seams really, really easily.
Exactly.
So on a 4 patch, what you want to make sure you're doing is nesting your seams on the back when you sew it together to get a precise, let me take this out and show everybody. This is the matching point right here in the center of the block, and you want to make sure that those really match up clean. So what you do is you nest your...
and you can feel that. You can feel it when you're putting your pieces together, and make sure you can feel that they're nesting. And you want it to just come in and nest together, so when you press it, you get that perfect little...
section in the middle where it all comes together, so there's no gap or overlap of any of these pieces. So that's really the precision of a 4 patch, is getting that point right there perfect.
Yep.
So and if you don't get it perfect, what I would do is, so sometimes if it's a lot of points I'm putting together, I might, and I'm not 100% sure how it's going to look, I might use a bigger stitch in case I have to take it out on the first round, just to see what it looks like, to make sure I'm pinning properly and sewing properly. And then I would take that stitching out. I call it like a stay stitch or a basting stitch. Baste it to see how you're doing it if you're a beginner. And then you can see if you're making it right before you sew with your regular stitch length, so that it's easy to take out.
And it's always best to just sew one. Don't sew them all together. Sew one and make sure that you've got it the right size, that the whole, so you don't want to sew all of them and then realize, oh gosh, I'm off or whatever.
Right.
So I always just sew one unit first and make sure it comes out the way that it's supposed to come out.
And the nice thing about this is it does call for a little bit of a trim. So that if you're slightly off, you can trim it up. I always prefer to do something slightly bigger, not a lot bigger, but slightly bigger, and then trim to the proper size, because I find that I'm much more accurate that way, in case I get a bobble in my seam, or when I'm sewing, it's not perfect. Because, sometimes I'm just not perfect. I know that's hard.
It's hard for us to admit that.
Yeah. So then the next thing you cut, so that's the 4 patch. That's one of them. And how many were we making of these 4 patches?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I can't remember either.
You're making 12 units.
12 units. There it is right there. And this is called Unit 2.
And that's the other thing. I tag all, because they tell you to do this, especially with a mystery quilt. So I put all the information. I put the size that it's supposed to be. I put what puzzle it came from and how many I cut, the whole thing, because that way, if there's an issue when we build this whole quilt at the end, I know exactly which instructions I can go back to make sure that I did that right.
Right. So always make sure you label these so that you actually know which pieces you're using, because there might be another 4 patch along in this mystery somewhere. We don't know that yet because it's a mystery quilt.
So that's Unit 2,
You're labeling very good. So this is from Block 1, Unit 2. So you need to make sure you have that on there. So the block A of our block 1 of this uses these 2 fabrics.
Yes. So and that's fabric
The two
C and
jumbles.
fabric L, yeah. And you're going to cut out of each piece, you're going to cut 4 widths of, strips at 5 3/4.
Okay.
So
And so then from there,
did I skip a part? No. Okay.
maybe it's on the back.
Right here. You're going to take, because you've got to cut those in half, I believe. Yes, okay. You cut the 20 squares. That's how many you're going to cut, okay? Out of each piece. And then you cut them in half diagonally to yield 80 quarter square triangles. So 160 total. So you're making a lot of these units. And then you wind up sewing those two together.
Okay. And the one thing that you want to remember on these is that you're sewing on the short edge, not the long edge, but all of these other edges are biased along on here. So
you don't want to handle these too much.
too much, and you don't want to press them really, really hard.
And it's really easy. All you got to do, because everybody, especially a beginner, you're going, I'm going to be sewing from a tip. But if you fold it if you lay it down the right way, you're going to start where you match up your raw edges here and just make your seam, and and then you just press them to one side.
Okay.
And did it say press to the dark side, or?
I'm sure it said press to the dark
That's what
side.
I did. So
yeah, I'm sure it did. And you're going to make 80 of these units.
So that's going to take a little bit of time.
Right. So we've got 8. So for block 1, we've got 80 half square triangles that look like this, and we've got 12 four patches that look like this. Okay, so we've got block 1. If you need more information, feel free to reach out to us, because we're happy to give you more information if you need it. Okay, so we're on to puzzle piece 2. This is the one that people have been asking us, when are we going to get this up? When are we going to get this up? We are done with it, and we're going to get it up right now.
Okay, so the 4 fabrics that you use are these ones here. So
okay,
this is my extra.
All right, so as you can see, we do have extra of each of the fabrics.
And I always, like I said, I even mark my extra and like what puzzle, fabric B, fabric,
So it came from, so we're using Roman glass. We're using I can't think of the name of that one all of a sudden. It escapes
Jumble
me.
or paperweight?
Paperweight.
Paperweight.
So this
Tells
is
you right
Roman
here.
glass. Oh, this is paperweight. And this one is called carpet cookies, and I just love these little pieces in here. This is like a really, really fun piece. And then the blue jumble is what we're using right here. So what we're making with this one is a square and a square?
Kind of.
Kind of.
Yeah. So you've got this piece here, and when you open it up, you have all these different motifs. And out of this whole piece of fabric, you only needed... how many? 5?
Yep, 5 it says.
Yeah, 5, and you're cutting
4.5 inch.
no 5-inch squares.
5-inch squares. So as you can see, what she did was fussy cut to make sure we got these motifs in the center of the quilt. So you can see we've got a little.
And that's what this picture here in your instructions talking about.
Talking about. So you might have to make a plastic template or find an exact ruler,
5-inch square.
5-inch square ruler. To make your template. So you see how you cut it out, so that you're fussy cutting that for the center.
And
of
the hardest part for me was picking which 5 do I want to use.
Okay. Since you don't know what the quilt looks like.
And so I kind of try to get like a little bit of a variety in there.
Okay,
So,
I think that sounds perfect. That's a great idea.
I got some with black, and then I got this green. And I'm sorry, but green's my favorite color. So but green's a dominant color in this fabric piece. So those are the 5. So and remember, you're just cutting that first, and then the next thing
is you're going to use this jumble.
Yeah, the jumble, and you're cutting. That's a piece letter C, and you're cutting 4 1/8 half square triangles. So we skipped, where are we at? Right here. From what fabric is that?
It's a blue jumble.
That's C. Okay. So you're cutting 2 strips, 4 1/8 inches wide. So, and you have to, that eighth of an inch is a big. You don't want to skip that. Make sure it's 4 1/8.
Okay.
And then
because you can trim these up at the end if it is a little bit bigger once you sew those on.
Right.
So make sure that when you're doing your lines that you maybe get just past that 1/8 of an inch line. So when you cut exactly, when you place it and it's exactly on the line of your thing, that gives you like right on it. So if you go just slightly to the left or the right of it, it gives you just like a hair or two more that you can always trim off if you need to.
Right, and once you cut those 10 4 1/8 inch squares, then you cut it diagonally right down the middle, and that's going to yield you your 20 half square triangles, and that's
Okay.
what's used to then put here. And to build these, you'll sew one side here, and what I do is I fold my triangle in half to get the center, and I do the same with my square to get the center, and I match those up. So I sewed this one first and then this one, and then I pressed everything, and then I came again and I measured, I folded it in half to get the center of each piece, and I added these pieces, and then those are trimmed down. Where are they at? Right here. To 6 7/8. So it's not quite 7 inches, and that would make a difference. So you want to make, and you want to, when you do it, you want your seam allowance, and that's what's kind of cool is this is a lot of times they make it to where you're going to wind up with it exact,
just a 1/4 inch.
and
these look like they're a little
bit more, so they're gonna like float in your when it's all put together. So you shouldn't have any issues with, and you don't want. That's one of the things when you work with stuff, you don't want to. When you're sewing it together, you don't want to have to cut off your tip, and they've left you plenty because your seam's going to be about right here, so all those tips are going to show real nicely, I think, in your finished product.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. And so we've got those. How many of those did we have to make? We made 5 of these.
5 of these.
Okay. And then what else do we make?
With
So the next one we're going to use is these two fabrics right here,
yes.
the Roman glass and the paperweight, which are great complements to each other because they both have a lot of circular movement to them.
And you're just cutting, you're cutting rectangles, but you're starting to cut with, we're doing what, B and F, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're cutting 4 strips of each at 3 3/4. And then once you get that cut, you're going to subcut that into 10 4 1/8. What was that?
Okay, so
10 at 4 1/8. Yeah.
I can see one thing that's really important here is it's not an exact, like it's not exactly 5 inches. It's not exactly 4 1/2 inches, which a lot of people are used to cutting. So make sure, and maybe you even need to go back and highlight those when you're writing them, or write them bigger, so that you can make sure, because I can see that we're cutting some at 4 1/8, some at 3 and
they make
3/4.
they make like a highlighting tape too. If you want to buy that, it's like a 1/4 of an inch thick. Yeah, it's a 1/4 of an inch wide, and you can take and cut that and mark it on your ruler so you know exactly what line you're supposed to be following when you make those cuts.
And cut on, yeah.
But the first thing you do is you sew you sew your strips together. Like we did with the other one, and it's just easier. So you'll wind up with a strip. I don't know if I had any extra. I guess I used it all on this one. And then you cut them into
cut them into the segments.
Yeah, segments, and that measures.
So you sew them exactly like we did this strip together, where you sew the 2 strips together, and then you subcut them into the units once you get these 2 sewn together. The 2 sewn together, which would be these 2 fabrics.
So it should measure 7 inches high from here to here, and then you're cutting them into 8-inch segments. So they should be 7 by 8. 7 by 8.
Okay.
And you wind up, and how many do we make of these? A total of 20.
Okay, so that one's a lot.
And again, I've got it all labeled, what puzzle, the whole thing. So that's all that takes place in these 2 units in puzzle number 2.
Okay, well, thanks so much for giving us that information. Like I said, if you have any other questions, please feel free to ask us a question on YouTube, or to shoot us an email at info@myfavoritequiltstore.com. We're more than happy to help you with anything that you need on these 2 puzzle pieces. Thanks so much, and have a great day. Happy sewing.